Jason Salter's job is showing off Port Phillip Bay, above and below the waterline.
Step off. Perfect.
His dive business employs 60 people and so far is a thriving concern. But he says right now his best hope is doomsday tourism, a visitor's rush, because soon, he says, both beauty and business will literally be gouged out of the bay.
I'm bringing my kids out. I'd said to them that they could come out diving when my youngest one was 14, but unfortunately that's next year, and with the dredging happening in the intervening period, it'll mean that she won't get an opportunity to see the bay in its current condition once the dredging starts.
It's been appalling. It's been absolutely eye-opener to see that you can spend your whole life building a business and make it strong and have it flourish, and then have another company come along and just rip that away.
This is a major infrastructure blockage for this state in the biggest container port in this country. This is a serious issue. This is about the economic viability of Victoria and of the nation.
I think the government have fallen for the Port of Melbourne Corporation's spin.
The effect of channel deepening not going ahead would mean that Melbourne would be increasingly bypassed as a container port.
Port Phillip Bay is an irreplaceable item. It's precious to the people of Victoria and the people of Australia for that matter. They are about to destroy the Port Phillip Bay as we know it.
Even before a soggy sod has been turned, dredging has agitated oceans of emotion and debate. Just how low can you go without wrecking the bay? The project managers say up to 19 metres to accommodate a vessel measuring 14 metres underwater.
In the last quarter, just ended on the 31st of December, 44% of the container vessels entering or leaving this port could not do so fully loaded because of restraints of the channel.
There's 100 unique species at the entrance, sponge species, which occur nowhere else on Earth. We're going to get more water flowing in and out of the bay, so that's going to have hydrological effects on the bay.
We've proved it time and time again with poll after poll after poll. The people of Victoria do not want this project.
Last year, 2 million containers entered through the Port Phillip Heads and crossed the bay on their way to the Port of Melbourne, the country's largest container and general cargo hub. The project managers say they'll remove 23 million cubic metres of seabed from parts of existing shipping channels at the mouth of Melbourne's port and further south just in from the Heads. The dredged material will be stored in 2 dump sites in the bay. Contaminated material will be in an underwater clay containment area at the northern site.
The conditions that we've insisted on imposing will ensure that the environment is absolutely adequately protected.
Federal Environment Minister Peter Garrett approved the dredging last month on the proviso that the project's Environment Management Plan meets 16 conditions.
Peter Garrett traded on his environmental credentials to get himself in the position that he's into now, and in my opinion he has done a complete backflip on all the people who actually put him there.
In theory, the approval has cleared the way for the dredging company, Boxalis Australia, to start work on February the 1st. But the lobby group Blue Wedges, claiming to represent bay users and more than 65 business and community groups, is considering filing for an injunction this Thursday in the federal court.
The port have misled the government, the federal government. This project is much bigger and much more toxic and much more expensive than when it was referred to the government in 2002.
The Victorian government refused to speak to the 7:30 report on the grounds that the minister responsible is on holidays. And the Federal Environment Minister, Peter Garrett, also refused because of the imminent court case. His critics say that if he can't speak or give them his reasons for his decision ahead of the legal proceedings, then how could he provisionally approve the project before the court case was even heard?
He's produced a very, very bad legacy for his own personal reputation and for the incoming Rudd government.
What Peter Garrett should do now is halt the entire process. Certainly he should not authorise the environmental management plan, which he still has to tick off. He should now go back and say, I have made a mistake.
Critics also point to the minister's press release, which said his conditions would protect, among other things, the Western Port Ramsar site, which in fact lies across the Mornington Peninsula from Port Phillip Bay.
I would say that he hasn't checked the environmental credentials, and there's plenty of proof that he hasn't, particularly in the fact that he mentioned the Western Port Ramsar wetland sites as part of his media release as to some of the things that are going to be protected in the Port Phillip Bay issue. So obviously he's not on top of the issue.
I don't think he's seen it, and I don't think he even knows exactly where it is that's being affected, and for him to just rubber stamp this and let it go through is just absurd.
Critics say the bay has already suffered long-term environmental effects from a trial dredge in 2005. The Port of Melbourne Corporation has since admitted that trial dredging triggered rock falls to a depth of 30 metres, breaching its own plan.
So we've actually refined the dredging methods. We developed specifically a scale model in the Netherlands.
We can expect a lot more rock to be falling for a very long period of time, and some of that is going to be falling into the marine park.
Project opponents also distrust the process of putting dredged industrial waste in so-called underwater clay bunds.
There's over 3 million tonnes of toxic waste that is too contaminated to take the landfill, and yet they're going to dump it dead smack in the middle of Port Phillip Bay.
The Port of Melbourne Corporation points to the $100 million environmental bond payable to the government if the environmental plan is breached, and an annual independent audit. Critics are not convinced by either measure, nor do they accept the economic arguments that the dredging will yield at least $2 billion in direct benefits over almost 30 years, while its total cost has recently been estimated at nearly $1 billion.
The benefit-cost ratio is still quite high. It's still 2 to 1, which is very much a green light for most infrastructure projects.
I don't believe there will be one job created by the channel deepening project, other than in mop-up operations.
Businesses on the bay, such as Jason Salters, have indicated they may take action to demand compensation.
I'm anticipating it's going to put us out of business.
Any capital project, whether it be dredging, road building or bridge building, does unfortunately leave short-term disadvantages to those in certain communities. But the long-term economic benefit of the channel deepening project is of concern to the state of Victoria.
Either way, both sides know this week's court case is unlikely to be the end of the matter.
And late today, Mr Garrett put out a statement saying his reference to the Western Port Ramsar site rather than Port Phillip Bay was an inadvertent error. Mary Guerin with that report.